Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. John here from Wild Boar Cycling, and I'm joined by
This guy, Brian.
Hi Brian. Nice helmet here this
I
morning.
rode my bike here. Come on.
Yeah, so it's Tuesday. It's a training ride day, but we thought we'd stop and talk about some of the bike building process Brian's going through right now. So Brian, as I shifted this video, so describe to us what you're doing in the video here.
Yeah. So I'm not particularly good at welding, and welding thin steel tubing is harder than thick pieces of tubing. And so I'm just, I had a frame I tried to build last year that I totally messed up, and I basically cut it up and have been just practicing welding bits of it together. So here's just me welding pieces of old bike tubing to other pieces of old bike tubing.
So how'd you learn to do this? I mean, the welding piece of it.
I'm like totally self-taught welding. I got a stick welder in college, so like 20 years ago, and just weld that way. And then at some point in time in college, one of the, engineering school, one of the shops, they offered a class so you could use the shop. I got a "this is how you don't hurt yourself with a TIG welder" lesson, but by no means like this is like getting good. And so basically everything I know about TIG welding is me messing up or learn from YouTube. There's kind of a number of good folks out there teaching welding on YouTube.
So, Brian, you're building this gravel bike, and you've chosen to use steel. What was some of your thought process behind that?
Yeah. Well, the welder I own can't weld aluminum, so that's out of the question. I can't build an aluminum bike in my shop without buying a $1,000 welder. I don't really want to mess around with laying up carbon fiber and the resins and the sanding and the dust and yada yada yada. So that's carbon fiber build is also out. I did think about building a wood frame bike. We've talked about wood frame bikes before. Not a lot of people do that. There's a lot of cool engineering material reasons why wood's a great bike frame material, but I felt like that was a little riskier. And I like steel. I like to do blacksmithing. I have machine shop where I work primarily with steel, and so I like steel as a material. And that just makes sense. I mean, people have been building steel bikes for 100 years, basically.
So my Strava friend Nathan, this is for you. Steel is real. Hey, so what are some of the properties of steel bikes that you really like?
Steel's really great for a lot of reasons from an engineering standpoint, but also from like a cycling standpoint. And I feel like for me, I ride steel bikes because that's what you can get cheaply on Craigslist usually. But it's really the ride feel, and that's kind of like I don't know.
Ride feels pretty subjective, but if we look at elasticity, steel does have some elasticity up to the yield point.
Right, yeah. I mean, there's lots of great things. So, like, you can bend steel and then bend it back, and it's still as strong as it was before. Like, if you bend an aluminum bike frame and you try to put it back into shape, it's pretty toast. And if you don't bend carbon fiber, it just breaks.
It just breaks, yeah.
So, yeah, and I mean, there's a lot of things about steel. I mean, like, per pound, it's really strong. It's also really cheap. But I think the real thing that steel has going for it is its kind of stiffness ratio. Basically, what ends up happening is if you make an aluminum frame bike big enough to be stiff enough and strong enough, it's like too stiff. And that's really what we mean when we say ride feel. There's just a steel bike frame kind of flexes the right amount, so it absorbs the vibration of the road. Like, you don't want it to be like riding a noodle. But you also don't want to be chattering your teeth the whole time. And especially on a gravel ride, steel kind of has its...
Yeah, and of the metal bikes, we have steel, and you have aluminum, and you have titanium. Steel is probably one of the easiest ones to work with.
Right. Aluminum can be, if you have the right equipment, just as easy to weld. Titanium's a little tricky to weld. I haven't actually ever done that.
And comparing to the yield strength between, say something everybody knows about titanium and steel, steel rates up there pretty well as far as yield strength. I mean, it's not that far off if you look at some of these numbers on this particular graph, and we won't go into this in detail because there's a lot of math that's involved with all this. So, but we just thought we'd share this today, and see how that's going for you.
Yeah, and I just want to throw in, since we've got that graphic up there, we're looking at it. The steel on here is listed at 4130, which is kind of like a steel isn't like a thing. It's like a mixture of stuff, and it's mostly iron, and there's some carbon. 4130 has some chrome and molybdenum in it to give it different properties. The steel that I'm using is Reynolds proprietary 725, which is a chromoly steel, so it's 4130, but it's been heat treated and cold worked to make it stronger than just like a run-of-the-mill 4130. It's not the best steel that Reynolds makes, but it's kind of like the good value. It's like the mid-range. It's the 105. It's the 105, whereas the other ones, like
the Ultegra or the Durace, right?
Yeah. A 4130 would be the Niagara or Claris, but yeah.
Yeah. Very cool. Hey, so what's your project timeline here as we start wrapping this up a little bit?
Yeah, so this video is supposed to go live
next week sometime.
In the 20s. So my time frame is it's the 14th right now. My time frame is to have the bike built on February 10th. Which was 4 days ago. So we'll see. I did have a little snag yesterday. I was getting I think I'm on a clip somewhere. We got my bottom bracket shell welded to the seat tube. It was kind of the first thing I tacked together. And I was putting that in a jig, and I was lining out on my drawing. I have a big 2-scale sketch of the bike, so I can take measurements, angles, and distances and stuff. And I was laying it out to get the other tubes in the jig, and the tubes I had left over weren't the right length. And I scratched my head a little bit, and I looked at the seat tube that was tacked on to the bottom bracket shell, and I realized that was not the seat tube, and one of the extra tubes I had laying should have been there. Somehow I made a measurement error, because it's all about the wall thicknesses, because the outside's all the same, it's the insides that's different, and I somehow welded the wrong tube to the wrong part, but luckily it was a tack weld, and I was able to cut it off pretty easily. So kind of started from scratch again. But hopefully I'm hoping to have this tacked together in the next week or two, and then an actual functioning frame ready for like painting and whatever.
Well, we will be excited to show that to y'all at home, viewers. So make sure you stay tuned and do the standard YouTube thing.
Yeah. So like, subscribe, notify button, leave a comment down below. Apparently the algorithm liked comments, so leave a comment down below. Let us know if this interview style change from our previous videos is something that you want to see more of or didn't like at all. Whether you liked us or not, make sure you comment that. But yeah, thanks for coming out.
In the meantime, go out and ride, have fun, and keep the rubber side down.